Well, hello guys, this is Infinite Flash here. Today I am going to be talking, or actually doing some tactics training today. And why not with the intermediate leveled problems? That's what we should start off with today. Well, in this position, I see that, f5, interesting. So if I capture this with en passant, if knight takes, then rook takes e6 looks pretty good for me. If e takes f, then queen takes f. Something looks fishy about that. I just can't put my finger on it at the moment. It's probably because of knight takes d5. That looks also quite good. E takes f, queen takes f6, knight takes d5. Queen d8. Knight e5 and queen h5 is looking very, very deadly for black. Looks very, very deadly. Terrible position for black, honestly. Looks like the first move I would consider. Also, another move that you would want to consider is moving this knight and getting the queen out of here on the h5 square to try and checkmate the black king here. That's very reasonable to do. I just wonder, where should we move this knight to accomplish that? Knight takes g5, h takes g5 is just not working for me. I want to move this knight and somehow get it in the action. I don't think I can do that at the moment, though, unfortunately. It's very, very unfortunate that that's not working. Are there anything else available? Is knight takes d5 perhaps working? E takes d5 and e6, is this forcing enough, I don't think so. After knight f6, I don't see an immediate continuation after that, unfortunately. Let's see. It's not an easy problem at all. But of course, we always have some hope of trying to decipher what's going on here. Usually the answer just pops into my head after a while, but not this one. This one's not easy at all. Knight h4 is also reasonable, trying to go knight g6, but I don't see the big idea, to be truthful here. Knight h4, g takes f, queen h6 is obviously good, and after king e7, I suspect that um, queen h4 is good for me, because it's actually not so clear, to be honest. There's no way to be forceful here. I guess en passant is the right way of approaching things. Yeah, I just don't really understand what's the point, though. En passant, queen takes f6, knight takes d5 is not looking like... I guess the black king is getting destroyed, but it doesn't look so decisive. I wonder about this. What's the idea with that? Okay. Apparently it's +3. Amazing. I thought it would have been +1. Not knight takes f6, of course, because that's rook e6 and black gets destroyed, I guess. I would have suspected queen takes f6 when knight takes d5 is happening. If queen d8. One thing I'm just not noticing is that rook e6 kills black. So of course knight f6 is forced when rook takes e6, bishop e7 is decisive, I suppose. Not so easy to figure out what white should do, though, here. I don't know what's the obvious continuation here. Maybe knight e5, right? Trying to activate all the pieces, and white's in very good shape. So next problem. That was a little bit weird, to be honest. I did not expect that. Since this is the intermediate problem level section, guys, I want to focus less on the basics of calculation and just focus on just pure calculation itself. In this position, we see kind of an offside rook at play here, and I'm just trying to wonder ideas with king e4 and g4, are these working at all somehow in combination with each other? For example, king e4, the rook has to move, right? So rook f7. One thing that is also in the works is this pass pawn. So if I push e6, there's nothing really he can do to stop it. And after pawn e6, e7, excuse me. I don't really see a way for black to stop the passed pawn here. Notice that if e6, rook f8, this knight is covering the e8 square also, so I think that e6, rook f8, e7 is pretty much just killing black, so let's run with the passed pawn, and I don't really believe in any of this stuff that black is doing along the way. Alright guys, let's try the next problem. Let's see, h6g. My position looks quite bad, actually. Look, I'm about to get destroyed over here. And I suppose we're trying to salvage something in this position. Very, very difficult to believe that there's anything good here for black. I mean, these two pieces are hanging, and the rook is hanging by a thread. It looks like black is almost lost here. So I guess we have to take the pawn in g3, if I'm not mistaken. If I hopefully I'm not missing anything. I don't think any of these pieces are in well positioned, so I think this is a draw by perpetual check, as it should. Black should be very, very lucky to have in this position. Yeah, I think I should be happy with the draw. Yeah, of course this is the draw, but wow, interesting. I'm wondering why these problem ratings are always at 1200. Let me see if I can change that setting, guys. Give me a second. I'm gonna pause the recording and try to change the setting. Alright guys, we are back here, and in the next problem, I just tried to change the setting to a more appropriate rating. I kept on getting 1200 problems, but I wanted a little bit tougher, just to kind of go through the basics of what we are trying to accomplish here. Let's see, the king is terribly placed over here, of course, so knight g3 check is pretty much picking up the rook over here. I don't see anything unusual about that. Queen f6 attacking this knight is also plausible, but I guess black's position is just totally winning in any case, where we can just afford to check, and I think that should be just a flat win, honestly, for black, so I think just taking the rook would be appropriate. Just taking and capturing the hanging pieces, right? Just giving checks and trying to capture those free pieces as we should go for. So let's see the next problem. Interesting. An endgame problem. Middle endgame. I don't see anything as of yet, but I've just spotted the idea that we're supposed to go for, I think. Notice that there's a certain kind of configuration here up here. If it was white's move, then white would play knight takes b5. We would capture back with the a pawn, and white is quite acceptable. White's position is quite okay. But notice that along this file are these two rooks kind of opposing each other. This rook is putting a lot of pressure on this file on the b2 pawn and indirectly attacking this rook somehow here. One line that we can kind of predict here is if we somehow remove, let's say if we take this knight, right? This is the first kind of line we see in our calculation with capturing pieces, right? Let's say if I start with bishop takes c3, b takes c3. Unfortunately, this rook gets to the open file before our bishop could have moved and somehow created a trouble for white. Our next kind of thoughts might lead us to believe that, okay, let's say if I take the bishop on f1, white would capture back, probably with the king, right? And then we would take the knight, and if b takes c3, then rook takes b1 is winning the rook here, and I think that's actually the right approach to this position, so I'm going to run with that. Capture both minor pieces here, and it turns out that black wins, so that's a very nice step-by-step calculation that we can try to go through. Let's see, in this next problem, interesting. I feel like I've seen this somewhere before. Well, this problem we just have to notice that the knight is just pinned here due to this bishop, and the key is to know that since this knight is immobile, these squares that this knight controls are non-existent. So the e5 knight is not really attacked by the knight here in c6. And the same thing goes for the b4 and the a5 squares. Also b8 and d8 and e7 also, of course. So this knight is pretty much immobile. So we have to look at moves such as knight takes c6, bishop takes c6, of course. But there's a thread here that I guess black missed in the complications with a very nice attack on the queen right here. we can gain a tempo and actually win the queen with bishop a5. I think this is a very, very nice move since black's queen was trapped on the b6 square. Queen takes a5 is pretty much killing black. Okay, I'm going to try to raise the level of difficulty again. Sorry about that, guys. I think it is changed now. I think we should be getting a little bit more difficult problems now. Just for the intermediate sake, I think we're on about 1500, 1400 level right here. This looks certainly like a harder problem now. Okay, let's see what is up here. Nothing looks too obviously great here. It doesn't look like there should be anything great, but I think I've spotted the idea. It doesn't look so obvious at first what's the idea, but notice that this queen is running out on squares. If it was the queen's move, I think we would see the pawn rush to the a5 square, and perhaps castling is also possible. Probably castling would be the ideal move for black, followed by queen e8 to escape this knight here in the c6 square. This knight is just a beautiful piece, blockading this c7 pawn, and this b6 pawn. What we also have to notice is this b6 pawn, by black pushing it, has weakened these two light squares here in conjunction with this working queen. And so we can logically figure out that, okay, we just have to develop our first moves that might come into our mind are, well, our knight is well positioned, our queen is kind of well positioned, we need another piece in the attack here. We have nothing developed. I highly doubt that there's going to be anything with these two pieces alone, so we need to bring our last piece into the game. Bishop d3 would be normal. Bishop e2 is sometimes normal, but not here with the bishop here on the g4 square. Bishop b5 is also plausible, but if we go one square farther on bishop a6, it turns out we are actually taking away all the squares from the queen, of course, and are winning the queen. So that's a very, very nice continuation. I think what we have to notice is, okay, well, fair enough. He gave away the queen for a proper amount of material, but of course, this is not sufficient. I'm just wondering about bishop takes c8 if this is any good. Bishop takes c8. Knight takes a4. I mean, this knight is trapped though, so bishop b7 is doing good work here. I think it's very plausible that that's a good move. But okay, d takes c5 is also very good. I think. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just winning a piece. So that is a slightly harder problem in the 1500 level. Let's go to the next problem. Queen d5, interesting. Well, the first thing that pops into my mind is that, this king is extremely weak. Look how vulnerable is this. Queen takes f2 is a mate in 1. Interesting. Not sure why this is a 1500 level problem. Maybe people are tempted to take the bishop here. I'm just baffled. Like, this is checkmate in 1. Just for humor's sake, I want to see. I'm just wondering why this is a 1500 problem. Let's see why. Let's scroll down on these comments. Not sure how this got to 1800. Seriously, that's it. Now I have the false sense that I'm getting better at the game. 1900. The comments are pretty much. This is quite amazing. That this is a 1500 level problem. I'm quite shocked, honestly. That is not. I would consider that is not a 1500 level problem. I would consider. Alright guys, I think I see the next problem idea. It's quite beautiful, honestly. Yeah, I mean, this is very beautiful, honestly. I wish I could have this kind of combination in one of my games. Notice that this white king, we've had this in the last tactics trainer video, this king being isolated by the rook and the pawns here. It's running out of squares, and we can notice that the h2 square, similar that in the other game, the h7 square was weak, and when we had reverse colors, what we noticed is that there's a lot of tactical ideas in this position. Sacrifices must come to mind, like rook h3, right? I mean, threatening checkmate, and g takes f3, h3, queen takes h2, rook takes h2. Those are checkmate, but unfortunately, after rook h3, white can just give a check. So we've got to figure out another move to prevent this check, or try to go about our business without running or allowing queen d7 check or queen e7 check, you know, or the queen trade even with queen c7. If white queen trades, then he wins with this strong pass pawn, and this strong pass pawn's over here. What we have to notice is that we have to play forcing moves, checks, and it turns out the winning combination is with the very beautiful queen takes h2, and it turns out queen takes h2 is pretty much getting white checkmated, since knight g4 is making sure that this king has to move now. Notice that after knight g4, the king is not moving to the h3 or g3 square. It's very important that the rook is covering this rank over here when we see this in our calculation. So after knight g4, you might be wondering, after king h1, well, what's the big idea? The big idea is that after knight g4, king h1, we have the very beautiful rook h3 when the pawn has to move, and we get our desired rook h2 checkmate. So that's a very beautiful queen and rook sacrifice that is winning the game immediately. Very beautiful, honestly. I wish I had that one in a game. Alright guys, I'm going to go move up to the next difficulty. Let me just change the settings here. Alright, let's see the next problem. Okay, it's getting slightly more difficult, I would imagine. Interestingly, this offside queen, this is very relevant to this position. I wonder why, though. I see these two rooks here. The first kind of idea that appears into my mind is these weak light squares in front of the white king. So, you know, we have to look at checks. Queen e4 check is also possible. You know, rook takes e3, a capture is possible. Queen takes a2, of course, is on the agenda. Bishop f3 attacking this rook is also reasonable. Bishop e4 check is also reasonable, but it turns out this is a somewhat more difficult problem. It doesn't involve any captures, but it just involves major threats, and it turns out black is having major threats in this position. It's pretty much a forcing sequence, right? Forcing sequence. After the right move, bishop e4, what we have to notice is that white only has one move. The king can't really go anywhere else on the board other than the c1 square. And then black has the very nice move in this position with queen d3, pretty much threatening white's king. The puzzle might actually stop after bishop e4 with king c1 because black might have queen takes a2. That might be just checkmate with queen b1. Very difficult to see what's the problem with that, honestly. I don't know, but still bishop e4 is the right move. I'm just wondering what's the difference between queen d3 and queen a2. I might consider both very viable. Queen a2, what could be wrong about this? I'm not seeing it immediately. Maybe then the bishop could move properly, I think. Maybe that's why. I'm still not seeing actually what's the difference. But in a real game, I'm probably playing queen d3 and winning the game, right? This is the idea. I'm just curious about what's so wrong about queen on the, let's say, what's so good about queen d3 versus queen takes a2. So apparently after queen takes a2, white can play the very nice rook d1 move. Interesting. And if queen d3, what was the big idea? Bishop f3? Wow, that's very difficult. And just there. Interesting. Okay. Well, if queen d3, what happens if rook d1? Ah, I see the difference. The queen is attacking the rook here on the light square, on this e2 square. So if rook d1, just queen takes e2. That I did not consider that difference in my calculation. And the bishop's hanging, and we also have checkmate here. That's the key to this problem. That's not really understood. Not that it's not understood, but that's not seen so obviously here. That's the difference here. So I didn't really see the difference there. So shame on me. Even I missed that tactic. So I got lucky, guys. Next problem. Okay, the first thing I noticed about this is that black is just terribly weak dark squares here. Um, this bishop is just a fantastic piece. It's pretty much going to cost black the game, I think. And the really first idea that we kind of look at is queen h6, threatening queen g7 checkmate. But unfortunately, black has a very nice fork here with knight f5 that is threatened. So our rook is being threatened. We probably normally would want to move the rook here, maybe rook a4 or rook g4. Rook d3 followed by rook h3 is possible as always, but it's just not working, I think. And we have to see the next idea, which is, well, if this h pawn is gone, I can go with queen h8 or stuff like that with checkmate on the back rank, but it's just not happening. But notice that it doesn't always have to be the queen that's doing this task. Our queen is only moving, in straight lines in this kind of line. It doesn't move in it doesn't really require itself to move diagonally. Let's say if the h7 pawn was there, it only has to be like a rook that gets to the h8 square. So one idea is that since this rook is here, we also want to have this idea of getting our rook to the h8 square. So in this particular case, the queen sacrifice kind of idea comes into consideration with queen h7, followed by this very normal rook h4 kind of theme. It's just checkmate actually on the h8 square. Very beautiful. I've only had this kind of theme in maybe a couple of my games, but the positional kind of theme of sacrificing on this kind of square, followed by a check on the h-file, not maybe even with this rook on the h1 square, if this pawn, let's say, took here, force the black king to surrender itself under fire or something, I don't know. But it's very common, this kind of tactical pattern, sacrifice and opening of the position like that. So, next problem. See, bishop takes f6. White's king looks incredibly vulnerable. And I already see the idea. So the normal immediate reaction in like a bullet game is like queen takes f6 without much of a second thought, but it turns out we can insert a couple of moves here. Since this white king is so weak, we can play some intermediate moves, and one intermediate move is the check with bishop h3. We don't necessarily have to capture this bishop immediately, so I want to play bishop f3, and then the next thing we have to look at is, okay, I still have queen takes f6 in my back pocket, but can we play any other intermediate moves? Black is just dominating on the board, and we also have this intermediate move with knight f3 check. This pawn is not being covered by anything, and it turns out it's just checkmate. So very, very nice problem. I'm going to up the ante on these problems still. I want to get it a little bit tougher. Hopefully this has been a little bit more entertaining so far as we've gone up a little bit. I'm going to pause this recording really quickly. Alright guys, we are back here, and I've reset the ratings to a slightly more difficult to about 1700 now. And the problem looks like it's gotten a little bit more difficult, surely. Yeah, that does not look easy at all. Well, first thing I notice is that if I could have queen a2, this would be checkmate, in fact, almost. If, let's say, king h8, then knight f7, we have the smothered mate combination, king f8, queen f7. That would be checkmate. But unfortunately, black has rook e6, and it doesn't work at all. Of course, we also have to look at queen h7, also a very normal move in this position. I'm just not sure about where to place the pieces, though. Queen h7, king f8, there's no obvious continuation for me here. I don't see at the moment how to proceed. That's not terribly obvious what I should do. Also, the queen is hanging here. That's amazingly quite embarrassing that I didn't even see that this is a free piece. So that's a 1700 problem for you guys. I want to see at the comments how bad they were. Let's scroll down. It's going to be quite embarrassing. I feel like just give me a second. I need to check something. That's too obvious. How could I miss that? Yeah, I mean, this is quite ridiculous. In a real game, you're going to see that, but it's very funny stuff. Lol, it's funny how really these easy ones can be high enough to get it high enough of a rating. Very funny stuff. Unfortunately, if you missed them, I feel bad for you. So yeah, embarrassing that I didn't even see it, but at least I got the problem, you know. Okay, this is looking like a slightly harder problem though. I don't see an immediate checkmate or a win in this position, but let's see what happens. I really don't see an immediate win at all now. I'm a little bit skeptical about what to do here. Um, just just wondering what is the idea. I mean, I see some queen kind of trap ideas with queen f5 when white is basically forced to play queen takes h5, and the idea is that after queen takes h5, queen takes f4, we would give this check, the king would have to move, and now this queen on f4 is occupying the g4, the f3, and the e2 squares, e2 by the rook on here and this square, so we can try to attempt to queen trap this guy, probably with a pawn move on g6, and after queen h5, sorry, let's go through that again. Queen f5, queen h5, queen f4, king b1. We would play g6, I think, and after queen takes h6, since the queen can't go back here on any of the squares, we would have bishop f8. This queen is trapped, and we are taking it for free, I think. So I think that's the best idea, and I don't see a better move alternative for white. So he's just going to be down a piece for no compensation. Just a very, very nice kind of combination, honestly. So the recognition of what are the weak squares is very important in this position. So I think it's a very nice problem of tactical recognition and realizing what's a weak square and what's not. In this next position, I notice all these weak light squares. I don't see anything immediately, but I'm sure there is something since it's tactics, of course. The first thing that pops onto my mind is, this bishop is somewhat trapped here, given that these pawns are pretty loose in this, pretty solid in this position. I mean, forgive me for that. Let's see, if I go c6, force this bishop to capture here on the e4 square, I would probably play f5 and force this bishop to capture my pawn. If I play rook takes e3, bishop takes g6, rook takes e1, rook takes e1, h takes g, that would win a piece. So let's see, c6, bishop takes e4, f5. I don't really see a better move than, I don't see a playable continuation, honestly. So c6, I don't really see what white is playing on this. Pretty much, I think this is the right move. And okay, it looks like I was right, and I'm pretty much looking at the forced line here. I don't see another playable continuation since this is a pinned queen here. So another good problem. I think this is appropriate for the difficulty as I'm expecting. I'm actually expecting a more difficult calculation-heavy puzzle soon. Some of these can be difficult for a player like myself. I think a good and not a good. I mean, let's say a common kind of problem that I might come across. That is not an obvious problem actually. Let's see. There's white's position looks amazing here. The knights and bishops just look well placed almost. I see this weak diagonal, so immediately I might just plop out rook e6, right? And if queen f6, then I think we have. That's not so obvious actually. Queen, rook e7, queen f7. I don't see an obvious continuation there. So that's not great for me, is it? Okay, maybe rook e6. Don't see anything immediately. It's probably because I'm terrible at tactics, right? Right, guys? Probably really bad at tactics. Very, very strange stuff. I mean, we're up what? We're down in exchange actually, and it's expecting us to see tactics here. Interesting. I am a bit baffled. Okay, rook e6, then queen g5. What's the idea with the queen trade? I don't see the big deal at the moment. This is quite problematic, actually, that I don't see the motif necessary to try and force a win here, as all these tactics usually do. I would definitely want to go rook e6 and sack on h6, but if a rook e6 then queen g5, what's the big deal exactly? So we need to think of a better kind of way of approaching this position. Rook e6, queen g5. I don't see anything actually. Rook e6, queen g5, f4, queen h5. What's the big deal still? I don't see it at all. I don't see anything at the moment. That's really difficult. I'm probably blind actually that I can't see a single kind of tactic. I mean, of course, if we saw rook e6, queen d8, I mean, we could just sack here and checkmate immediately. You know, this bishop's just a glorious piece. So we're kind of dwindling down the amount of pieces that, places that black can go. So rook e6, queen f7, rook h6 is winning the queen, of course. That's really nice for us. So I guess rook e6 really has to be the only move. I don't see anything else playable, honestly. Any in between moves, probably not. So rook e6, queen g5, f4, and if f4, what's the big idea? I don't see the immediate kind of infiltration kind of idea. I just don't see it. F4, I mean, there's more than a couple moves, but it's very difficult to say what's the correct idea. F4, queen h5, bishop d1, maybe? We can use queen f7. I don't see the right idea here. It's not easy at all. That is a hard problem, honestly. Let's see. Nah, I don't think knight c7 works at all because of rook a3, and there's no forks over here that are half decent. What I'd love to have is knight g6, but that's just not happening for another, 5 moves probably in the real game, at least at the best case scenario, but just not seeing anything at the moment. This is hard to believe that there's any tactics here. Rook g3, rook g6 might be a little bit crude. It looks way too slow though. I don't really believe in that too much. If I could bring this bishop back and bring it like on e5, that would be great, but I'm never getting that, am I? So I'm just wondering how to approach this. Rook e6, did we give up on this too fast? Rook e6, queen g5. It's gotta be something here. I'm just missing something, I feel like. Queen takes g5, h6, g5. I doubt there's anything there. Looks way too iffy. So rook e6, queen g5, f4. Queen d8, then we have rook h6, maybe? No, maybe not. Maybe not. I don't see anything at the moment. That is a very troublesome problem. I don't know what to do, actually. Watch it be some obvious capture and that I didn't even consider, you know? Still though, not easy at all. I'm just okay. Let's see. Rook e6, queen g5, f4, queen d8. There's still no sacrifice here on the h6 square, but maybe we're missing something in our calculation. Somewhere. I have a feeling that we are. I just need to find one kind of tactical theme and then I'm good. I can think I can figure out a lot of it. It's not obvious at all. Well, I mean, we also have this idea of knight takes d4, right? Followed by bishop takes f8. That is half decent looking, honestly. It's not that bad, but I don't see the big deal. Let's say if I go for this kind of continuation of rook e6, queen g5, h d5, knight d4, followed by bishop f8. I mean, I don't see the big deal. He can just take our bishop here on the a3 square. I haven't accomplished that much. So, see, rook g3 maybe? Followed by rook g6. Is this at all reasonable? See, rook g3. I just don't know at all. My god. Don't know at all what to do. Excuse me, guys, for that right click. I just am baffled, honestly, about this position. Alright, guys, I'm just gonna give up, honestly. I don't know, rook e6 the best move? Apparently it is. I just don't understand the big deal about it. I'm just getting lucky, of course. I guess if I see this position, I guess I'm supposed to find it. This is a very difficult looking kind of tactic, you know? Not easy at all. So I guess the move is f4, but what's the big deal? There's like a ton of moves you have to look at and calculate. Like f4, queen h5. This I don't get how it's winning at all. None of my pieces are placed finely, I think. One thing that might nah, I don't think so. Actually, never mind. I don't see at all the big deal. Is rook g6 possible? Rook g6, queen h5. I still don't see the big deal about that kind of continuation. Um, Queen takes g5, h6 g5. I'm just amazingly just confused about what's the big idea. Let's go with f4. That looks like a tempo gaining move and looks like it would be forcing enough, you know? Okay, I missed the idea and concept entirely, I guess. Let's see the move. Queen takes g5. What? What's the big idea, though? Rook takes b6. Yeah, I mean, white does have a material advantage, but I didn't think that this was that great. Wow. Yeah, that's hard to gauge because I guess after bishop moves to e4, bishop takes e5, and white has a decisive material advantage. That's a very, very difficult problem, I feel like. That's more of a positional kind of tactic than tactic itself, I feel like. Let's scroll down to the comments and see. I feel like I work hard for that. It's a lot of work to figure out that that's the best line. Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's a very difficult problem, I think. Yep. A very, very difficult problem, I feel like. That's a good problem, honestly. To work out what's best. In a real game, I probably would have played something. I don't know. I don't know what I would have played actually. I'm not sure if I would have been looking for tactics. I feel like I would have played rook e6, queen g5. I'm not sure if I would have played queen takes g5 though. Not sure what I would have played honestly. All right, guys. Sorry about the long problem, but that seemed like an instructive kind of point. Of course, let's go through that again. Rook c8, rook takes b7. But the key point, I guess, is that black can't move the bishop at all because he's going to be dropping c5, followed by dropping d3, d4, and we have the passed a pawn with two minor pieces versus a rook, clearly winning for white. Next problem. This looks tactically not good for black, and I think I know why. And that's because of rook c6 with the pin here on the rook right here. It almost looks like black's in trouble though. It almost does. it almost looks like if we could remove the defender of this bishop, we could somehow get to rook c6 and this knight is pinned and then white wins, but it's just not happening. So bishop takes c6. Black's not playing f takes c6, allowing rook c6, but he's playing knight takes e6, and he's okay there, I think. Even if it is a win, still. It might be still a win though. Bishop takes e6, knight takes e6, bishop takes e4. That might still be a win for white somehow. I don't see how immediately though. Next we have to look at the captures of bishop c7, rook c7. That doesn't look like there's much there. Let's see, rook c6 first. That looks interesting, but black moves the knight, right? Maybe black moves the knight. Although if the black knight moves to the a8 or God knows where, d5 square maybe, then bishop d5 with knight d5, and if knight e8, then after rook c, so rook c6, knight e8, then we have bishop e6, I think, or rook e6. I apologize for that. So rook c6, knight e8, rook c6, rook e6 is attacking this knight, and if f takes e3, bishop takes e6, then we are forking the king and the rook here. So I actually think that's the right approach. I think that's a very nice idea here. Notice that if bishop takes c4, we can capture with the rook here, and this pin is still maintained. So I think that's a very reasonable problem. So let's see what this says. Rook c6 is of course the correct move, and after rook c6 it gives e2, but that's just junk. Apparently it gives king f2 and to avoid bishop g4 check. Very nice, very nice motif. Takes, and the knight is still pinned. It doesn't have anything better, and black is forced to hand over that bishop, then knight over there, and white wins easily. With a continuation like that, of course, just winning for white. So next problem, guys. And I think this will be the last of the 1700 problems. We'll move on to the 18 problems and 100 problems and call it a day, I think, after that. So let's see, we have a back row problem here. That is not nice at all. And we're trying to take this rook also along the way. It's almost working. Something's almost working. It's such a tricky position, But we've got to make this somehow work. So, a move like bishop e7 almost works, but rook takes d3 is unfortunately preventing us from getting to what we want. It's very unusual that there's nothing here. That's slightly unusual, and I think I just spotted the idea. It took me a while, but I got it. So notice that this rook is coming onto the f8 square, and our rook is also attacking our rook here. And these two threats need to be addressed, but it turns out we're up a bishop already when compared to white's position. So all we have to do is prevent one of the threats, and then we can go for the other and somehow stag off the attack, So how do we prevent rook f8 in one of these lines? The key is to realize that we have to somehow maybe move our king over the g8 square, play the pawn up, one of these pawns up, or somehow otherwise deflect or distract the white rook from this square. So if we go king g8, the only problem is that rook takes d3, and actually I think white wins in that position. So we can also rule out g6 and h6 and g5 and h5 because of rook takes d3. One other idea that you might think of is maybe rook f1, but I think white just takes that rook, and you're left searching for answers since this back row problem is still a problem. The last move that you might consider is the fantastic rook g2, and I think this is the right move, threatening this rook and preventing the back row set, preventing rook f8 since this rook is pinned to the king here. And after rook takes g2, notice that this rook is on the g file, not the f file, so it can attack the f8 square for back row checkmate, and it is safe to take the rook over here. We have completed that problem. Very nice problem. Alright guys, let's see if we can up the difficulty just a little bit more. Alright guys, we are on the final 3 problems, or 2 or 3 problems of the 1800 level. we will finish it off from there. Maybe tomorrow I'll do more advanced kind of tactics. This is going to be a very, very long kind of combination problem, isn't it? Looks like a very difficult one. A lot of checks and possibilities here. Queen takes a2 are very much possible. Queen takes a2, king d1, queen d2 mate is the idea, I suppose. Is it really that simple, though? Queen takes a2, I only see king d1, and queen d2 is just checkmate. Really? Okay. Queen c1, I suppose, is why this problem is getting so much attention, right? And after king b3, people must be left baffled. I don't understand it at all. Queen takes a2 is just checkmate, right? Followed by king d2. Excuse me, guys. Let's drag over queen to the d2 square and solve this problem. I'm curious, why is this problem so highly rated? I guess this guy has it right with Shaquan. Yeah, queen c1 allows black to white to escape. I agree. It doesn't look that great. It doesn't. I mean, I didn't really see anything better. Let's go through that actually. I think if we go through, let's say rook takes a8, queen takes a2. So let's go through queen c1. Amazing. It gives better for white. Amazing. King b3. Our king is so badly placed, but I suppose after you take the rook, king queen b1. Apparently there is a lot of checks to be had. I mean, of course white's better here. I think white wins, actually, truth be told. It doesn't look good at all. The same thing goes for king takes a8. I don't like this line at all. This line just looks terribly winning. I mean, of course white wins this position. The computer's spouting nonsense here. I think white wins that easily. Not easily, but it should be a win. The passed pawn on e6 is just too strong, and the white king is just too active. The white king is just going to approach the f5 square, the f6 square, and somehow infiltrate to get to this black pawn here. I don't believe it at all that black can survive that. So queen takes a2, queen d2 is pretty much forced. So let's do another couple problems with this and see what happens. I always love when I'm attacking, you know? I mean, it's just quite a beautiful sight whenever we can somehow get at the black king, you know? The first idea that pops into my mind is, you know, knight c7, knight f6, check. These are two pretty much checks that I look at whenever I see this problem, and notice this knight and bishop and kind of configuration are just not well placed with the queens along this file, so I want to somehow get knight f6 in, but I can't at the moment. Let's see. If I go bishop h6 and try to deflect this bishop off the square, am I accomplishing anything? See, bishop h6, you know, bishop takes h6, knight f6. And then after knight f6, I think king d8. But what's the big idea? We would still have to capture our bishop back here. With king f8, of course, queen h6 is checkmate, but I don't see the big deal about that all, you know? That's the first idea that pops into my mind. I think I spotted the idea, and that's okay. That's also reasonable. I think the idea is just, you know, that there's this pin piece, and we need to take advantage of it. So bishop g5 is attacking this knight, and there's no way black can defend this twice, I think. So bishop g5, bishop f8 is the only way to defend it, but then knight f6 is checking the black king and queen here. Very, very nice combination here. So I think that's the right approach here. So I'm going to play that actually, and I think this should be right. And of course, if f6, we're capturing with the bishop here, still with the threats available here. So if bishop f6, then knight f6 is still forking the king and queen. I don't think that really requires much more analysis. Very, very nice kind of problem you can find in a game with this kind of tactical motif of overloading along the file, and the pin piece is extremely important. This position reminds me of Karpov Topalov somehow, with I think it was Karpov's queen sacrifice that somehow brought the best out of his position. Although, of course, that would involve queen takes f6. I just can't remember why there's this kind of thing popping into my mind right at the moment. Alright guys, let's see what's the best kind of way of approaching this position. I think I see it now though. It's a very beautiful kind of idea. Yeah, I mean, first thing we have to notice is that these dark squares along this diagonal are weak. The f8 square is always taken if we move the knight somewhere. And we're also looking at, moves like queen takes f6, queen h6 somehow. These are very, very close to being checkmate. If we can somehow make it work, then that would be awesome. If I could somehow get queen g5 or queen h6 to work with knight f5, that is another thing that I want to look at in this kind of position. So an idea is that, if I check with knight f5, black king either has to capture the black has to either capture the knight or play king g8. These are the only two moves. If g takes f, then queen g5 is actually checkmate because of this bishop on covering this f8 square. That's really nice, actually. If knight f5, then king g8. I wonder what's the big idea. This is the thing that's annoying me a little bit. I'm just curious. What's the idea? Let's see. Knight f5, king g8, queen h6, perhaps. Then what would happen here if he played knight h5? I'm not so sure what's the idea yet. Of course, knight e8. So if we go back to that, knight f5, king g8, knight queen h6, queen h6, knight e8. We have rook e8. That wins for white because of queen g7 checkmate. Still not sure about knight f5, king g8, queen here maybe. Don't see it immediately. We can also play knight f5, king g8, knight h6 check when king g7 is forced. I'm wondering about any kind of continuation after that though. I don't see an immediate continuation there. Not easy at all. Let's see, knight f5, king g8, queen h6. Maybe queen f8 though. That's also reasonable here, right? Maybe. Maybe. Knight f5. I have a feeling I know what kind of opening this came out of. It probably happened out of the Samish Kings, Samish Nemzo Indian somehow. White pawn structure is just pretty bad here. We have some kind of isolated pawn. Just a random point, guys. I'm just trying to buy time here to think about what I'm doing here. Still not obvious at all what we should do. I just want queen f7 to somehow work too. That would be nice. I just don't see it at the moment what we're supposed to do. Knight f5, king g8. This is very, very close to just being checkmate. It's just I can't make it work, honestly. One other point is that knight f5, king g8, queen h6, g takes f is also still mate with queen g5, so black still has to attend to that threat. I feel like this just has to be the move, right? Knight f5, king g8, knight e7 maybe? But then if rook takes, I think that should be a win for white. He's up the exchange and has a good material kind of thing. Probably not with the rook, probably takes with the knight. That looks quite acceptable, honestly. It looks quite good. So knight f8, king g8, bishop e7 maybe? Bishop e7 maybe, attacking the queen here. And if rook takes, then we're winning the exchange with knight takes. Okay. So knight f5, king g8, bishop e7, attacking this knight. The queen would have to move. We would give this check and attack the knight here. I think that would work, actually. I see that idea. I'm happy with that, and I don't see really anything better at the moment. Very, very unfortunate that this position, you can't acquire more out of that. Or maybe you can. Okay. Queen h6, but there's okay, there's not queen f8, but what about knight h5? Probably g4, right? Oh, that's beautiful. Ooh, completely missed that theme. Yeah, I mean, you have a feeling about that one, but knight h6 doesn't seem like it would work from the far. Very, very difficult to see from the far. Beautiful. Wow, maybe I just dismissed that too fast. Just very beautiful theme, common theme too. Surprised I didn't see that. But Queen G7 is just an excellent kind of thing. I wish I could let's, give that a thumbs up. Honestly, I think that deserves a thumbs up. I think this is a extremely great problem. Yeah, what a problem. All these guys are like, yeah, it's cool. It's kind of awesome. Very nice, beautiful, and it's out of a book. That kind of stuff. Very nice. I missed that. Alright guys, last problem. I think this will be the last problem before the end of the session here. Okay, one thing we have to notice is rook takes a4, queen c1 check is killing us. Let's see. If we play knight e2, attacking this queen, what is the idea? Knight e2, queen e5 maybe? Then rook takes a4 and queen takes e2. It's probably just not good for me. If we go g3, g3, queen h6, then we're forced, we got out of the back row, so we still have rook takes here, and we're out of the woods there. I think that's actually right. Wow, it's weird. Maybe people would miss that in their calculation that the queen can't cover the bishop along this diagonal, and that we were actually just picking up a piece, you know? Very weird problem. I think you guys deserve another problem for that. That was not that hard, to be honest. Not as hard as the previous one. That was a very beautiful problem that we had in the previous problem. Didn't expect that one, to be honest. One thing that pops onto my mind is that the queen is quite kind of lonely over here on the g6 square. So a move like knight e5 is not something I'm really fazed by, because this queen is just very vulnerable here. Also, bishop d3 seems quite plausible here. Yeah, bishop d3 is very normal here, I think. Also, knight h4 is normal. Let's see. There's got to be something here. Excuse the mouse dragging over, guys. I didn't mean that. Also, queen b7 is reasonable as well. Queen b7 unfortunately is met by c5, but we have queen c8, bishop d8. I mean, I'm not sure about that entirely. Very, very tough position. e4 is also might be working, you know, trying to trap this queen at e4, queen takes e4, bishop at d3. That's, I think, a queen trap. Almost with that, though. Unfortunately, queen takes f3 is winning the knight there. Dang. Let's see, knight e5, queen e4, then we would have bishop d3, and that would be a queen trap, right? So if knight e5, the only move I think would be queen f6, and I don't see an immediate continuation after that. It's not so apparently obvious what we should do. Bishop d3 is normal. I think then queen h6 though, right? Then e4, queen takes h3, knight g5 is not working because of bishop takes g5, okay? Still not really 100% sure on what we should do though. It's a very tricky and tactically sharp position. It's very difficult. Let's see, queen b7, c5 is just not working. Dang. If I could somehow get bishop b5 check after that would work, but it's just not working here. Bishop d3, queen h6. Just amazingly scary. If I go e4 again, queen e4, I feel like this should somehow work. Although I can't logically give you an answer why. got to be some kind of theme here, you know, with the vulnerable queen over here. So knight e5 gains a tempo. That looks reasonable. Queen e4, then we also have f3. That traps the queen as well instead of bishop f3. Knight e5 is queen h6. e4 would win a piece with e4, and the queen is attacked here, I think. Although he could take our rook then. Although if he takes our rook, we can play queen b7. That's very, very complex stuff. Let's see. Very difficult. Very, 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 very difficult. I just don't see anything at the moment. It's very difficult to approach that position, guys. I am just tactically slow at the moment. So just forgive me if I'm making this kind of boring. I'm just massively struggling here. E4, bishop takes c4. What's the big deal? Probably bishop takes c4, right? e4, bishop takes c4, bishop takes c4. Nah, queen takes e5. e4 is just working for him. Unfortunately. Wow, that is a tough, tough problem. Knight e5 is, again, not working, but I'm not sure why there's something at all working here. Knight e5, queen h6. Maybe we've missed something. Maybe knight e5, queen f6 is also good. Something we've missed too. Bishop d3, is this any good anymore? Let's look at that once more. There's got to be something here. Bishop d3. I'm always annoyed by this pin that we have to deal with. It's like, what if we moved our queen, you know? Did I count material properly? Yeah, I did. I just don't know what to do. Looks strangely difficult to play. I mean, there's got to be some remarkable theme here going on that I'm not noticing at all. What if it's like rook c6? That would be impressive, you know? I doubt it though. Rook c6, knight c6, of course, is not working, but if rook c6, bishop b3, rook c8, I was just thinking of some crazy line, but it doesn't work at all. It's a shame. Very, very, very tough stuff. We can still win the exchange though with knight e5, bishop c4, bishop c4. That's still good for me. Okay, at least we have that in our back pocket. Very nice to know. Knight e5, queen h6, queen f6. Okay, well, I don't see the difference. e4, and that's just very tough stuff, guys. I just don't see the right continuation. There's got to be some kind of queen trap, you know? Bishop d3, queen f6. I mean, that looks like a queen trap entirely. e4, you know, that has queen trap written all over it to me, in my opinion, with some kind of bishop g5 kind of idea, and e5 idea. So I'm gonna probably end up going with bishop d3, but I don't see the idea after queen h6 still. Queen 6 e4, queen takes h3, e takes d. It just looks so good for white somehow. I just can't put my finger on it. Okay. Yeah, of course it's not right, but I just don't know what to do. It's very difficult. Yeah, but c5 here. Okay, bishop d8. And knight e5. What? I just stopped calculating here in this position. I just assumed that there's nothing here. What's the big deal? After queen of 6, what's the big deal? Okay, I'm just taking this all in just for a second. So I suppose the idea, one idea is that queen e4, bishop f3 is just not working at all. But after queen f6, I'm just now realizing that we can just take the pawn on c5, and that's good for white. It certainly looked like there's a queen trap here. That's extremely difficult. Pass rate is terrible on this problem. The problem is 1800. I wonder about that. Yeah, I mean, right. There's just too many possibilities. I agree. Um, Knight e5 is a positional move. Yeah, it's not a. It's not really. It's not really a tenable related to this problem. I mean, I expected something to be tactical when I come across tactics. I guess it's one of those positional things where the difference is like +5 versus +1. You know, that kind of stuff. So, of course, queen b7, c5, queen check, bishop d8, knight e5. I guess everything comes with tempo, and yeah, the difference between knight e5 and the next move is like +3, like difference between 3 pawns. So it's quite significant. I saw this line, but I didn't appreciate it enough. I just didn't realize that everything's hanging and rook takes c5 comes, and um, after knight e5, queen f6, this is the line we looked at, +5. Wow. That's very impressive, honestly. Let's see, castle? Let's continue that line. I mean, this position looks dominant for white, but he's not even up material. What's the big deal? Rook takes d5. Wow. And queen b7. Wow. Cool stuff. Wow. And yeah, this queen is trapped, I think, with queen b6 if white's not being careful. I think that's the idea, at least. Or just taking the knight. I don't know. Quite impressive that this is red. That's a very difficult problem. Anyways, guys, I'm gonna stop this session. That's a interesting intermediate tactics kind of session. I got most of the themes, but had some of the move orders wrong. I don't consider this kind of puzzle to be tactical. Knight e5 is not in the realm of being a tactical kind of move. I mean, I saw this kind of position and I just dismissed it because I thought we were supposed to go for the queen trap, misjudged those themes, and incorrectly evaluated the position. So see you around, guys. I hope you enjoyed that session. I learned a few things here and there, especially that knight checkmate idea with knight h6 and queen g7. That was a very beautiful smothered mate checkmate kind of idea that I missed. So it's one for the books that you have to remember. See you around, guys.